changes for this team. You have a new defensive coordinator now, Aaron Henry. Now he was on staff. He was coaching already, so he understands exactly what Coach Bielema wants. He understands how Coach Walters was calling defense. He understands. And so I don't see incredible changes on defense besides maybe some scheme because you now have to. One thing we're to expect is how are you going to replace, a Sidney Brown? How are you going to replace a Devin Witherspoon in the backfield? You're going to have a different look in your safeties and corners. In Illinois, the very first year with Coach Walters and Coach Bielema, they tried to run a lot of man stuff, and then they had to disguise it. They got really good at disguising it as the season went on, and then they started to run a little zone. Last year, they were able to really disguise it, but they ran a lot more man, which caused a lot more pressure, which caused a lot more turnovers, which caused a lot of these things. But he had an experience back. He had experience secondary, with your corners and your safeties. And so for the defensive side, you're not going to see everything be called in a spring game. So we could sit here and say we want to see how the defensive coordinator Aaron Henry calls a defense, which you will. I don't think they really care. Like, oh, they were running man, they're running zone. However that film gets out, however they look at it, they're not going to care. So you could put some stock into how they're calling it, how he's, moving people around. But what to expect with that, you're not going to expect too much from a lot of defensive calls. But it's going to be curious to see who gets played in the safety positions and the corner positions. Tavion Nicholson, he's the most experienced of the group. He played 10 games last year, so he'll be one of those guys that's going to have to stand out this spring, and that's one of the guys we're going to see. How does he really play without a Sidney Brown there? Because Sidney Brown was the leader, but how is he going to adjust to that? Another name to look out for is Miles Scott. He went from offense to defense. He played all 13 games at wide receiver last year. He's going to be playing some defense as well. There's some transfers here. Harper and Tyler Strain. Those are guys that you're going to have to look out for and see how they're going to fill the roles. And even though we're not going to see a lot of scheme being called, it's going to be curious to see, are they playing man? How do they play man? And it allows, again, like I said, in the spring, how do they know going into the summer? So these practices they've been able to see when they get into a game type where fans are there in the Memorial Stadium, how do they adjust to that? Can they play man? It allows them to work on some things. And we're not going to full on suspect what we're going to do into the season quite yet, because you would have to wait and see reports and have some practice and hear what they're going to say. I can only speculate at this moment, and we'll speculate later on about how maybe it might be less man because of who their guys are, because you have to cater towards what you have. Even though you can recruit for that. Those are some names that you're going to have to stick out towards the fall. Coach Bielema talked about Aaron Henry, talked about the guys. A quote for him saying is, I've kind of been stressing to Coach Henry, let's keep rolling guys through. Let's get as many reps, many valuable plays as we can, which that's the experience you're getting right now, which being younger with corners and safeties. Until this live scrimmage, you're going to have the value of calling, communicating, aligning, reacting is invaluable. And so people that talk about how spring may not be as important, right there, Coach Bielema said, like, these are important reps to see because it allows them to, if they're struggling, do they go to this transfer portal? Because transfer portal is a thing. We talked about it last time. If it's there, use it, I guess, until we get some type of restraint until we get some type of leadership from that. But those are a couple names that you got to look out for on the defensive side of the ball. And it's just going to be tough to replace those defensive players. You have a lot of them going to the NFL draft, which is cool. Coach Bielema said he's going to the NFL draft for the first time in his coaching career, which is crazy to think about, coaching at Wisconsin and having Russell Wilson and those type of guys. So it's a little crazy to think about that part. But continue to talk about the Illinois football team for this year. If you think about the roster on that defensive side of the ball, again, those names that we're gonna have to look out for is, Nicole Harper, playing that strong safety position. As of right now, that's what it's listed at. Um, you're gonna look at Tavion Nicholson. You're gonna look at Matthew Bailey at free safety. Um, curious to see how some of these linebackers play as well. You're gonna have Calvin Hart, Tarquin Barnes. How are they going to play in this defense that they're going to try to play? We already know what Keith Randolph brings to the table. So another thing that you have to think about is you're not going to see them a lot. You're going to see those guys at the very, very, very beginning. The safeties and the corners, those type of guys, you're going to see them a little more so they get some reps because, like I said, the quote is these reps are invaluable, and you're going to see those guys, but you're not going to see Keith Randolph very much. We know what they can do. You can see a couple of these linebackers, but you're going to see them at the beginning, and that's why the very beginning is very crucial. And seeing maybe how Aaron Harry is going to call a defense, and it will give us some insight into the summer and allow us to speculate later on into the season. So defensively, those are the things I think, and the names you have to look out for because Calvin Avery no longer there, Jamal Wood's not there. Um, David Witherspoon is going to be going into the draft and playing big time ball. Sidney Brown, Kendall Smith, Javaris Martin. Those are guys that you're going to have to replace. So defensively, just curious how they're going to play defense. Those certain names, how are they going to adjust to that? Do they have to play more zone? Do they have to play more, dare I say, since Lovie Smith times cover two defense? So those are the things that we need to be looking at and watching those players. And then your backups. That's what's really important. And I'll probably repeat that for the offense, but for defense, very important for not only those new guys to get reps, but a lot of the backups to get reps because then that allows to see for Coach Bielema going to the summer. Okay, how not in shape are we? How in shape are we? Are these guys that we can rely on if God forbid an injury happens? Are these the guys that we can, you know, rotate through, especially for a defensive line, where we can rotate guys and really put pressure on the offensive line and put pressure on their quarterback, put pressure on their play caller because we're always rotating guys. We're able to step in because it's a long season. You never know. So with injuries, conditioning, all those type of things.